Hey, welcome back to the Cellarcast episode 44. Right? Right? 44, yeah. Okay, I swear I don't do it on purpose. Let's see. Do I have anything? I don't know. I've kind of just been. This is a pretty news heavy week. We haven't had one of those in a while. Just the stories I'm interested in. Just happens, I'm not always on the latest trends. So it's not always news that's very interesting to me, but there is some this week. I actually haven't been playing that much new stuff this week, although I'd like to. Actually, I might be going back. Well, I'll save that for a minute, a little bit later from now. So we've got no questions. This week. Yep. A fluke. So no comment review. I guess we just jump straight into things. I really don't have anything else to talk about. Right? No, I don't really have anything. You might hear some noise outside. Someone shredding documents in the room right across from me. So this is actually a story that I wanted to talk about earlier, last week. And then I forgot because it's about Babylon's Fall, which is maybe the most unintentionally fitting thing for this game. So, if anyone didn't know, you guys know Platinum, right? Yeah, you all just nodded. They're the Bayonetta guys. So Platinum has been having kind of a rough time recently. They've just kind of been putting out, there's been a lot of news stories of them saying hey, if anyone wants to buy us, we'd be more than willing to. Hey, Microsoft. You want to try Dragon Scale again? I know that we split amicably and there were actually no hard feelings over it, but you want to try it again? So a little while ago, I want to say a year, maybe a little more, in the past, they showed off this new game they were making called Babylon's Fall, and it's kind of just, it's like a Platinum game. It's like a third-person fighty action game with kind of a fantasy aesthetic. And hey, okay, that could be cool. It's a Platinum game. Their gameplay is always really solid, really fun. Now, they're published by Square Enix, or a lot of them are. They have a working relationship with Square. So, Babylon's Fall is going to get published by Square Enix, right? So, midway through development, Square Enix goes, hey, I know you guys are making this single player, maybe I think it might have been originally supposed to be co-op as well, but I know you're making this game, right? Pardon me. Dude, I haven't been burping the entire day. This is my first one. It's as soon as I start recording. God damn it. They're like, hey, this game you're making is really cool. Have you considered making it a live service game? Uh-oh. Square Enix live service game. Uh-oh. Oh no. So the game essentially gets entirely reworked from the ground up. I'm sure that they ended up reusing things, but a lot of the game had to be remade to fit this new model that was forced upon them. This can't just be a one-shot, story campaign, right? Now it's got to be like Destiny. It's got to be like Avengers. And for that reason, they actually, I remember this from a little bit ago, they actually had to reuse assets from Final Fantasy XIV. Let me see if I can hang on. Babylon's Fall Final Fantasy FF14. let me see some images of this, because I didn't... Oh my god. Wow, yeah. I'm looking at the pictures. There's a couple that's like, yep, that is, oh, what is that? Is that gladiator armor? I recognize it. It seems like most of the ones that they stole, they didn't steal them. It was given to them with permission. They asked because they were so desperate. It seems that it was mostly like lower level starting gear from FF14 because you know, it's like more basic looking armor, and all of the higher level armor in Babylon's Fall is original, but you know, there's a bunch of like, you know, dinky little low leather armor or something like that that they took because they didn't have the time or budget to actually make that. So yeah. So it's like, oh, this game is looking rough. So the game releases to everyone forgetting about it, to zero fanfare. And turns out, yeah, it's extremely mediocre and repetitive and soulless and lifeless and boring. And I am not shocked at all, although I am disappointed. I'm more just disappointed at the situation, because Platinum, they're so cool, you know? You feel like, oh, they made Bayonetta, they did Nier. Man, Yoko Taro saved Hideki Kamiya's job. He saved that man. So, let's see. How long ago? Okay, I don't know exactly how much time passed between the game's release and this story, but it came out like maybe a month ago, in March. So this story comes out. This one in particular is from Tech Radar, courtesy of Callum Baines. Square Enix's latest RPG falls below 10 players on Steam. 10 players. I can't even think of, like... That's like dinky little, like, super indie, no marketing, just came out, like, one-man team numbers. 10 people. Holy crap. It's worldwide peak. Mind you, this is on Steam, and it was a multi-platform game. It was PC and PlayStation. Was it on Switch? I don't know. Does it matter? On PC at least, it peaked at 1,188 players the day after the release. Oh boy. Wow. It is also the currently worst reviewed PS5 game. Oh my god, and I completely forgot about this. They released it almost immediately after Horizon Forbidden West, and less than a week, like days after Elden Ring. Why would you do this? Why did you do that? Yeah. It's rough out here. It's rough out here for Platinum. It's kind of just one of those stories where you just revel in, like, damn, it's bad over there. Now, they've said, the game's official Twitter has said they have no plans to reduce the scale of development on Babylon's Fall. Content up to the end of Season 2, because it's a live service game, is now practically complete, and we have started work on Season 3 and beyond. How much do you want to bet that... Now, you know, I don't want to be pessimistic, right? And I don't want to maybe harp on things too much. But, like, what if... How much do you want to bet that, like, this content for Season 2 was actually content that was supposed to originally be in the game that got lopped off so that they would have some kind of a roadmap? I'm just throwing that out there. I don't think that... Maybe that's a little... Maybe I'm reaching. Maybe I'm reaching. Maybe that's a little too harsh. So, yeah. So I was going to talk about this, and then I literally just completely forgot. I 100% just forgot that this happened. So yeah, it's pretty bad. But not as bad as this next story, which is that, Babylon's Fall has fallen below 8 concurrent players on Steam. I fucked that up. They've fallen below 8 concurrent players on Steam. Ooh. On April 12th, Babylon's Fall hit 8 players in the evening. What was April 12th? Why did I just search up April 12th? I could have just looked for it. It was a Tuesday. You know, for Babylon's Fall, it was the most important day of their life. For everyone else, it was Tuesday. Let's see. Some major problems. This is a article from TechSpot. According to reviewers, the problems lie in the non-existent difficulty of the game, its dull level design, and an odd oil painting-like filter that negatively impacts its graphical fidelity. The main saving grace, according to reviewers, appears to be its combat, but even that doesn't appear to blossom, quote-unquote, until the late game. So it looks like it's basically just super mediocre. They didn't have time to actually craft like a challenging experience because they were like, oh, it's meant to be ground. You're meant to just like grind, this stuff over and over. Whereas, when you're making like a concerted, like you're making like a focused experience on making like a challenging action game, you can really like craft certain encounters and things, and just the level, just the game in general. Because, you have this in mind that players are only going to be doing this once. So I have a feeling that they just didn't know how to design one of these. And so they were like, I guess just make it easier so that it's not annoying when you go through it. Then they forgot to make it not boring. Yeah, so... Also, apparently the game just looks bad. I've seen footage of it. Oh, I'm yawning. I've seen footage of it. It just looks like it's got a weird kind of smear. It just looks kind of smeary. Like, I get it's supposed to be an oil painting thing, but it's like... It just looks like everything's smeared. It's bad. So I want to play a fun game. Because I was telling a friend about this the other day. And while I was talking to them, I decided to pull up the Steam charts page for Babylon's Fall. And I want to check if I can find the same thing that I found then. Babylon's Fall. Okay, well, as I speak, Babylon's Fall is sitting at a whopping 28 players. The 24-hour peak was 114, and its all-time peak was 1,166 players. So if we go to all, if we see the entire... Yeah, it doesn't look It's been on a steady decline. Looks like it had a small surge around looks like it released on a Wednesday about. Had a small surge into that Thursday, and then it just dropped and dropped and dropped. Then there was a little climb around there was a Monday on March 21st, and then dropped and dropped. And there was another little surge, and then it just drops and drops and drops and drops and drops. And it just keeps going lower and lower and lower. Let's look at the last 7 days. There was a point, midnight on Tuesday, April 19th, where there were 0 people playing the game. 0 people. And it just goes through these little spikes of around, has it broken 100? It got 105 on 105 on the 21st. And it got 123. Holy shit, April 23rd. Dude, Babylon's Fall Sweep. Hashtag Babylon's Fall Sweep. Whoa, dude. Yeah, it's rough out here. I feel bad for Platinum. I'm sure that there's really talented people working there. I know there's gotta be really talented people working there, but Square Enix, these big greedy assholes. Square Enix has this problem where they're run by really greedy assholes, which is like a lot of companies, right? But it doesn't stop there, because they're also not very good at making business decisions. It feels like nowadays Square has so many more misses than hits, and the only reason that their PR in general hasn't tanked is because the hits are really big. The hits are really big and the misses just die in obscurity. I think that if they had a really if they had a Daikatana on their hands, a game that just hyped up as, the best thing, the next best thing in the industry, or a Cyberpunk situation, I feel like everything would come crumbling down, dude. If that Final Fantasy VII remake sucked, people had their opinions on it, right? A lot of people loved it, some people really didn't like it, whatever reason, but generally the game was pretty well liked. Man, if that thing flopped, oh, dude, there were people in Square Enix's building who were did not breathe until the review scores came in. There must have been so much tension leading up to that game's release. Because, if that thing tanked, it was, critically or financially, it was gonna, oh, baby. I mean, these are the guys who pinned the existence of their company on making an MMO, and then put the worst leadership in charge of making that MMO. If Final Fantasy XIV had not gotten the A Realm Reborn treatment, they'd not brought in Yoshi P, the company might have gone bankrupt. That's literally, if Yoshi P was not a god of management and leadership, and was not an overall seemingly pretty cool guy, they would be just straight up dead. They would have just literally died in 15 or something. Yeah, that's why that guy's on the board. That's why that guy's on the board now. And it's frustrating because I love Final Fantasy, right? I like a lot of stuff that Square puts out, or that is, published by them. I'm a big fan. Dude, I love Nier Automata. It's up there for one of my favorite games I've ever played. I love that game. But man, you see them do this shit and pull these little but what if we had another? Cause that's the thing, right? It's I talked about this before, but Square Enix has an incredibly successful live service game. It's FF14, and they're able to do it while remaining actually that game is like incredibly respectful of the player's time and money. Like 14's a good game. I'm going to show for 14 more. 14's a great game. It doesn't like you can play it at your own pace. It really doesn't force that much stuff on you. The community is wonderful. It's super helpful and like friendly to new players. The game has like a real money shop, but there's no way to access it in game. Like this is one of the things that really struck me when trying out like the Old Republic, is that in the Old Republic I was just constantly getting reminders that I could be paying more money for the game, which was really off-putting to me as someone who had put actually quite a bit of time into 14 at that point, at least, by my standards. Like a couple hundred hours, over 100 hours, I'll say, into 14, which is a game where you can play it for free for the base game and the first expansion. There's no restrictions. And besides like some like auction house stuff and like communication things, which is just to keep people from messing up the economy and shouting racial slurs with like just making free accounts. That's like the only restrictions. Other than that, it's like you can do everything for free in those first two games essentially, and the game never once directs you to the cash shop. There is actually no way to get to it in game. There's no button. There's nothing. You have to open up like a browser. You have to open up a browser tab and go to the website to actually spend stuff on there, and you gotta log in with your Square Enix account and all that. And it's like going from that to like constantly being reminded of like, hey, you can't do this because you're a free-to-play player. It's like, okay. I felt like I was constantly, I think what I said was, I was constantly being reminded that I was playing a video game, and it was just kind of lame. 14 never does that. It's a wonderful game, and the team is, I don't know. I really like that game. The team puts in a lot of effort, and they're treated very well. I think they have like 5-hour work days or something like that, and they get maximum bonuses. And guess what? The game still comes out and it's awesome. Every single expansion has done incredibly well. Like you hear people be like, oh, A Realm Reborn it's a little rough, it's kind of hard. It's a little difficult to get into. I played it. I'm like, this is the bad part of the game. This is better than like half the games that come out now. This game's like 7 years old. This is the bad part. I'm having a blast, dude. I'm just fishing. Shit. I was like, I had this moment where I was playing 14 where I'm like, damn. Even the fishing in this game is good. I never like fishing minigames. I always think it's boring. Fishing in 14 is actually cool. Part of that's, because of the world and, the storylines and stuff, and the fact that every job has its own little story and all that. I don't know, dude. The game's really good. I'm just chilling for it. Maybe you might not be able to play it if you're free to play right now because the servers are packed, because the game is too good. Because there's too many people playing it. And they can't buy more servers because there's a global silicon shortage because of COVIDs. And they couldn't buy servers in the past because Square Enix keeps taking all of the profits that they get from 14 and funneling them into shitty live service games that die in like 5 months. That's where all the money is going. Not to the game that is already successful that they should just reinvest in. No. I want another one. And then they make one, and it has literally all of the trappings that, like, 14 avoids. It falls into every pitfall that 14 avoids. And then they're like, why doesn't it succeed? Well, we just gotta keep trying, It's like, people don't want that. I really want to play 14 now. People don't want that. Nobody wants that. I want to play a really good MMO. Or hey, maybe they had an opportunity to do that with like a really good action game. Babylon's Fall, you could have done something like Diablo. It could have been like Diablo. But no, it was Avengers again. I don't know. It's disappointing. I want to move on to actually an update to a case that I talked about a little while ago. So if you guys remember, there was a lawsuit, a gender discrimination lawsuit, excuse me, brought against PlayStation by one of their employees who was claiming that she was experiencing harassment, gender discrimination, all the classics. Well, we have an update on that case, and it's very interesting. So back when I talked about it, I said, these cases are important to talk about because I didn't make any hard, definitive claims, I don't think. But I said, I think it's important to talk about these cases because, of course, everyone knows about the stuff that's going on at Blizzard. That's awful, right? And that stuff happened, right? And the things that she was alleging were definitely, honestly, nowhere near as bad, nowhere near as, shocking as the Blizzard stuff. No one was stealing the breast milk, but, it was, I thought it was important because those are the types of environments that if you leave them unchecked, turn into, really horrible work environments for everyone involved, honestly. Staff, audience, all that. So, interesting little update on this case. So, a federal judge has dismissed most of the lawsuit, actually. But it's giving her an opportunity to make a stronger case. So, this one comes to us from Axios.com, courtesy of Stephen Totillo. So, essentially, her name was Emma Maggio? I'll say Maggio. 10 of her claims, so 10 of her 13 claims were dismissed without prejudice. So including those that focused on pay discrimination and harassment. So essentially, they said, the judge said that the claims that she made about 10 of these claims just did not have facts to back them up. Essentially, she came with claims and no evidence. So the quote from the judge, Laurel Beeler, says, this claim is dismissed because the plaintiff merely recited the elements of the claim and did not allege any specific facts. So basically, she came with a claim, and then when she was asked for evidence, she just said, it happened. No evidence. I don't know what her plan was. So, for example, she does not describe her work or how her work was substantially equal to the work of any male allegedly paid more than she was paid. So, yeah, she basically just failed to prove anything. You can't just say shit without backing it up in some way. She just said, well, I worked there, but then she also, this is so weird to me, because it's she didn't even say what she did. What her role was. I would think that would be pretty easy to pull out. If I was being discriminated against with pay, for instance, everyone's worked on a group project where you did all the work and someone else didn't really do any work, but they took the credit. I could, literally point to, okay, well, I did this, and this. It took me so many hours, and they didn't do anything. Guess what? I did that one time. The other guy got, half of the credit I did. For the assignment. He got, half the points I did. We were graded individually. Thanks to that teacher. Because he asked about it. And I was just honest. Yeah, so it's why didn't you say that? Unless, again, I don't want to make any hard claims because the case isn't done, and because there's a little wrinkle here. There's a little thing, because if you'll remember from a minute ago, 3 of the claims are still 3 of the claims are still going. They haven't been dismissed yet. And she does have an opportunity to make a stronger case. So Majo can continue to sue Sony over 3 claims involving wrongful termination and violation of whistleblower protections, the judge ruled. So those are the ones that she can actually still pursue. So she said she was fired in 2021 after submitting a gender bias complaint to the company. Her claims were that Sony had discriminated against female employees for years, paying them less, and subjecting them to, quote, a work culture predominated by men. Which is a weird claim. I don't really know what that means, besides my coworkers are men, and I don't like she doesn't say like a toxic work culture. She doesn't say like a work culture of harassment. She says that there's just men, and she doesn't like that, I guess. Or that is discrimination in some way. That doesn't really hold up to me. I don't really know what sense that makes, but okay. So throughout her ruling, Bueller echoed Sony's assertion, this is the judge, echoed Sony's assertion that Majo simply didn't present enough facts to make her case. So basically, Sony said, like, you have no claim, you have no evidence. The judge was like, yeah, you don't really have any evidence. In some cases, the judge ruled, claims of harassment were incorrectly applied to personnel decisions like promotions and demotions. Which is the point in the article where you I started asking myself, was she representing herself? This is one of those, okay, so I did this video quite a while back. I actually really like this video. What was it called? It was called like the Mortal Kombat murder and other video game lawsuits, I think. So basically, there was this story about the main topic of the video was a woman whose son stabbed another kid. I think they were both like 12 or 13. They stabbed another kid in broad daylight on the street with like a rusty knife they found. And basically it just seemed like she couldn't handle it, and she ended up suing Midway because they were both really into Mortal Kombat at the time. And when you actually I read through part of that video was I read through the actual court document. I read through the whole thing, and it was just like nonsense. It was very clear. It was sad, you know. It was one of those things that's like, I kind of want to laugh at how like poorly put together this is, but it's also like sad in a way, because I really get the feeling that this was a woman who there's no mention of like the father of the son or anything. So I'm like, man, I wonder if it was like a single mom. This horrible fucking thing happened to her, and you really don't want to face the reality that your only family is like a child, no less, is like a cold-blooded murderer. Like, that's got to be really like mind world shattering to deal with. And it's really unfortunate. But you were like reading these things, and I think just about every single claim she made like 5 or 6 different claims, didn't hold up at all. Did not hold up to scrutiny whatsoever. And I remember talking actually to my dad about this, and he basically, I was like just describing how poorly put together this case was, and he made this point that like, I didn't include this in the video. Maybe I should have thought about this. But, like, it's so badly put together that no half-decent lawyer would ever go for it. They would never go for it. So only two possibilities, because I couldn't find the name of the lawyer if there was one involved in the case. So there were only two possibilities really. Is that one that were most realistic? The first one is that she represented herself. The second one, which would explain how like poorly, just like none of the claims held up. Some of the claims were like I think one of them was a claim that she couldn't even make because in her state, it didn't even apply. Like, you couldn't sue for that in her state. Like anyone who knows their state's law would never even think to put that on there, right? So either she represented herself, or she had a lawyer who, I don't know, maybe she was approached by them, maybe she sought them out, and they preyed upon how desperate she was for some kind of like I don't know, some kind of revenge in some way. Because she sued Midway because she blamed them for her kid's death, and it made no sense. And that lawyer basically just exploited her and tried to squeeze as much money as she could out of this case. It was just this is one of those cases where I'm like, if this is true, and the case was actually so poorly constructed that there was literally no evidence for what should have been, for what should have been, like, if this exists, it's like, it's pretty clear what you need to prove. And the fact that, like, I can get sometimes, like, you make as many claims as possible, so that only so many of them get walked back, but, like, 10 out of 13? Wow. And especially because, like, the big ones are obviously pay discrimination, because that's, like, Title 9, I think? That's, like, a big deal, right? Breaking that? The Equal Pay Act, all that stuff. So, like, wrongful termination is, let's see, it was a wrongful termination, and where the heck was the other? Where the heck was the other thing that was like they didn't dismiss? Wrongful termination and violation of whistleblower protections. So I'm assuming that that's like, oh, you're allowed. I'm assuming what that means. So again, I'm no legal expert. What it means is that you're allowed to whistleblow. So you're allowed to make public bad things that happen at the company, and if you're punished for that, that's illegal. So like, if the things she said, okay, so there's this extra thing. Maja wanted to turn her suit into a class action claim on behalf of women who've worked for PlayStation, and the judge denied Sony's efforts to strike that. Beeler, the judge, cited declarations added to Majo's suit in March from 8 other women who currently and formerly worked for PlayStation. Those filings were full of claims of sexist work practices at PlayStation, and the judge noted that the declarations may yield new allegations. So that's like the one little catch to this story, because otherwise I'd look at this and if it was just her, I'd be like, huh. Again, don't want to say anything definitive, but I get the inkling that either it's like she's just very incompetent and representing herself, she has a very incompetent lawyer, or it's a fake case. It's like a I don't know, or it's a completely baseless case meant for, I have no clue. Like, obviously, you can read 100 things into like how it may personally benefit someone to raise some kind of false allegations like this. I don't know if any of those are true. Again, we don't know. And then the fact that because she did not initially make it a class action lawsuit. It was originally just her. So it's like, I have this conspiracy brain where I'm like, did she just add the other people? Did she make it class action because she didn't have enough to actually win the case? You know, it's like, was that what happened? That's obviously the least charitable reading of the situation. So I think we're basically put in a couple different positions with this, and I'm actually really curious as to how this pans out. Because, you know, so let's go through the possibilities. And maybe I'm forgetting some. Leave some in the comments. So let's say everything she said was correct, and she's just extremely incompetent. A Hanlon's razor, if you will. It's not malicious, it's just incompetent. So everything she said was correct, but it's just incompetent, and now she's bringing on other women to, like, shore up evidence, I guess, for the case. Second is that she's fabricating it for some kind of personal gain and is too, how would you say, perhaps too self-obsessed or something. Not reflective enough, not humble enough, perhaps too narcissistic. Again, I'm just making a ton of psychological reads into someone I've never met before. And she's now realizing that she has to bring in other people who maybe have had actual experiences. Like, just because one person could be lying about something doesn't mean that everyone's lying about something, right? Man, the thing about, like, calling demotions and promotions harassment, like, no lawyer worth their salt would ever, like, make that kind of a mistake. Like, there's no way that gets filed under harassment. Like, if anything, that's, I don't know, maybe it has to do with equal pay. Maybe there's, like, something that I'm not aware of that falls under. But, like, harassment? Come on, no way. You don't get demoted as a part of harassment. Like, that's legally not the same thing. So, there were some other conspirators on Reddit on r/games. So one person writes, so yeah, the first comment on the thread of the story is they pull up the quote about how there was no evidence for anything, and they say, wow, the description of the case seems like it was really poorly established. Is the plaintiff representing herself or something? A good lawyer would know better than to come in without establishing this stuff. Someone replies, my guess is they never intended to win at all and wanted the threat of court for leverage, maybe? Otherwise, this was just a lawyer happily taking her money for a lost cause. Yeah, so some other people in this thread bring up the difference between the court of public opinion and the court of the law. So, like, there's things that you can claim on Twitter, for instance, that just literally do not hold up to scrutiny. Like, yeah, maybe something was uncool, but is it illegal? Can you sue for that? And someone left a very interesting comment. I don't know if this is true. And hey, maybe I can look this up live. They say, yep, nobody talks about it, but Blizzard hired multiple companies to investigate the gender pay gap at their studios to figure out how to fix it, due to all the allegations. They found out there was a 5% disparity in which women on average were being paid more than men. So they just abandoned that and swept it away. I'm really curious about this. Hang on. Blizzard pay spell it right. It's pay discrimination. Let's see. I'm getting things about discrimination in general, which is like there was other stuff about discrimination. Let's see. I don't see any pay. Let's say equal pay. Huh, okay. A lot of stuff about how Jen O'Neill was only offered equal pay after she put in her resignation. So I don't know if that's true. So let's take that with a grain of salt. Yeah, I mean, searching for it is so difficult because there's so much goddamn Blizzard news with the same keywords, and so it's really hard to narrow it down. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, I'm really interested as to where this goes, actually. Like, hey, maybe there is something going on at PlayStation, because you always gotta, I think it's important to at least always be vigilant, to at least be like, hey, if something, like, I don't want to ever say anything super, like, hard line, oh my god, we gotta do something about this, or anything like that, if it's, until the actual story is done, like the court case is done and all that, and maybe there's an investigation, who knows, because, like, again, I think it's important to, like, you gotta nip this stuff in the bud. So, I mean, that's why you gotta take that stuff seriously. That's why you need to take this stuff seriously. If I was managing a company and I heard anything about this, I'd be like, oh, okay, that's very serious, because something could happen like Blizzard, which is, again, is a very, very cold, heartless way to look at it, that we might get bad press from it, but that's number one the reason why you would do that as a company. Your morals come second. So, like, yeah, if it turns out to be fake, hey, I mean, well, it would be a shame, because it'll be an example that people would use to discredit future people, which is why it's really bad to lie about things like this. Because when people come out with stuff in the future, it's like, well, there was that one time. So my advice would be is just take everything with a grain of salt. Don't buy 100% into everything unless it's, like, super hard proven. And a successful court case helps. And just, be willing to keep an open mind and not jump to conclusions about things. Like, I remember, if we're going to talk about the Twitter versus the courts thing, I remember these really dumb tweets when the Blizzard thing happened, where people were, I think Jason Schreier said something, and I get people have, like, opinions on Jason Schreier. He's a very sensitive man, but he does a lot of good work. Like, I have to admit, he does a lot of really good work on exposing bad labor practices in the industry, and that stuff, I think, is really important. We have a story about that coming up. But he made this claim, or he made this tweet that said that he had heard similar things, and that he was actually building up a similar list of stories for an expose, and people actually called him, like, they actually criticized him for this. People actually shit on him for this, and I was reading these tweets of people going in on him for not just spewing all this information as soon as he got it, and I was like, you people, well, you're just thinking, I don't know, it was just people who were just thinking emotionally. And they were like, okay, if you are going to make the type of claims, like, everyone knows the Blizzard story now, if you're going to make those types of claims against a company that big, and this problem is actually so wide-reaching, you need to make your case airtight. It has to be all-encompassing, and it's got to be super, like, overly solid, quintuple checked, right? You cannot have any holes in this case. It took a government investigation, a state investigation into the company to end up with the case we have now. One journalist getting, like, random stories from people who work at the company, even over the course of a few years, is never going to be able, or it's going to take them a very, very long time to do anything about this. And, like, you can't just come out and say shit. which I don't think people on Twitter understand, that in the real world, you can't just come out and like say shit about billion-dollar corporations that's like as serious as this without having good, solid evidence to back it up. And a wide, like deep range of evidence. Like the stuff that came out in that case was like absolutely insane. The amount of stuff that went down and how widespread it was. Because, so I don't know, I know I have viewers outside of the US. I don't know if this is the same way that the courts work in your countries. In the United States, we have this thing called no double jeopardy. It's not just from the game show. No double jeopardy essentially means that you cannot be tried for the same crime twice. That doesn't mean like you can't be tried for murder twice. It means you can't be tried for the same murder twice, for instance. Because it was basically, it basically exists so that courts, because the founding fathers were really scared of governmental abuse of people and tyrants. So it's funny, when you look at a lot of laws in the US, especially in like the Bill of Rights, you realize how many of them are just built to like make the government stop functioning. Like the reason Congress just seems to go into lockdown so much is that like it's basically just the government is built to shut down at a moment's notice because they were so scared of something happening. So basically, it was basically like, a king, for instance, which they were all scared of, that they hated the king thing. A king would be able to, or any kind of corrupt government would be able to accuse someone of a crime, and then even if they were found innocent, just retry them over and over and over again until they got the one lucky run where the evidence just didn't stack up enough, there was a slip, and basically just wear them down until they get to throw them in prison. So that's like an abuse of the court system that no double jeopardy is meant to prevent. Well, it also means that you can be found innocent of a murder, for instance, walk out of the courtroom, look someone dead in the face and say, like to a police officer, and say, I killed so-and-so at so-and-so time, so-and-so location with this weapon. This is my confession. It's admissible in court. I did it. You can literally confess 100% to what you did, and they can't try you again because you were already found innocent. That's just the way that it works. You cannot start a bad... That's why, like, bad, poorly put together cases for things that they're actually... When you're... The most unfortunate thing is when someone is correct about something, like something bad did happen, but the case is bad, and the lawyer is bad, and the evidence is bad, and they lose because they can never go for it again. You get basically one shot. You get one shot to do that case. So, like, if you're a journalist, you are well aware that you cannot just go around saying shit as soon as you get it, much less. Even if you had 50% of the information that the court documents had, or that the eventual lawsuit had. You can't. Because it's so risky, you're just one person, and if you fuck it up, none of these people get justice. They'll never get justice for what happened. Like, these are just the realities, right? But it's more emotionally satisfying, more rewarding to be all dramatic on Twitter, because you get to call someone a spineless coward. You get to be all dramatic. That stuff really annoys me. I don't know. It's like, these are the realities. If you actually understood what was going on, you would know that, like, what you're complaining about and what you're calling this person out on is fucking stupid. Yeah. I don't know how it works in other countries, but yeah, that's how the US works. You got to do it right the first time, because there's no redos. There's no redos, guys. Yeah. So, What the hell was I gonna talk? I went off on a real train of thought right there. I want to talk about this Nintendo story that came out. So this was originally posted Tuesday at 4:20 p.m. By CC Jiang for Kotaku. Excuse me. Pardon me. So, it reads, Nintendo worker files complaint with National Labor Relations Board. Now, this headline is a little misleading. So, essentially what happened here was Nintendo does a lot of contract work. I mean, a lot of studios, a lot of big companies do contract work. And they get these contractors from employment companies. So, you can sign up to be, you can get a job to basically be a contractor. So in this specific example, it was someone from Aston Carter, which is a contracting company. So an employee from Aston Carter who was a contractor for Nintendo filed a complaint with the National Labor Relations Board. Basically, they alleged coercive statements, discharge, retaliation against concerted activities, and surveillance. So essentially, to break that down, coercive statements is things to... it's basically language that is trying to get you to not unionize. It's not a direct order, but it's an incentive, basically. It's the sneaky language. Discharge means basically falls under like an illegal firing or some kind of retaliation, basically using someone's employment and firing them or not rehiring them as like a retaliation against something that they've done. Like you can't hold that over someone's head. And this was specifically retaliation against concerted activities. So concerted activities is just anything basically relating to unionization or workers getting together to solve problems without management. So, Aston Carter, the organization named in the complaint alongside Nintendo, is a staffing agency that has previously posted jobs for administrative and customer service roles at the games company. This isn't the first time that employees have filed... Yeah, so this is about the Activision union stuff. Blah, blah, blah. So, Nintendo responded to this. So, this first story... okay, so wait, one more detail. So, this does come off of the heels of a story from last October where Nintendo shut down studios in Toronto and California. Don't know if it has anything quite to do with that, but it is something to keep in mind. Nintendo did respond to the story, and they said, we are aware of the claim which was filed with the National Labor Relations Board by a contractor who was previously terminated for the disclosure of confidential information and for no other reason. Huh. Interesting. Nintendo is not aware of any attempts to unionize or related activity and intends to cooperate with the investigation conducted by the NLRB. We're fully committed to blah, blah, blah. So, yeah. So basically our story begins. Someone who is a contract worker for Nintendo basically says that they are treating their contract workers poorly. They are... The surveillance is another interesting one. They're monitoring them. So basically this implies that something's going on behind the scenes, that the contractors for some reason are trying to gather, they're trying to combine their efforts, unionize, one might say, and Nintendo is taking action against that by either not rehiring them, trying to get them not to, surveying them so that they don't. It's some kind of retaliation. Nintendo says the person who was fired, who is making this claim, was basically leaking confidential information. So there's always Nintendo leaks. So we've got two sides to a story. Well, we have an update. We have another story few days later from the same writer plus another guy named Ethan Gack. A union-busting complaint recently filed with the National Labor Relations Board accused Nintendo of America and contract worker agency Aston Carter of surveillance, retaliation, and other unfair labor practices. According to 4 sources familiar with the incident, that complaint, first reported by Axios, comes after a part-time employee a contractor, spoke about unions in a business meeting and was later fired mid-contract. In an unprecedented move, others are now speaking up about feeling disrespected and exploited at the notoriously secretive Mario Maker. The Mario Maker. So basically what happened here, we've got some more detail. We basically have now a more complete picture of what's going on. So there was a department meeting in February, and there was let's see. So someone asked for a general comment from management about unionization in the games industry. This does not say anything specifically about Nintendo, but just what do you think of the current unionization efforts in the industry? Because a little while ago, a studio called Vodeo became the first in North America to unionize. And there's also the Activision stuff that's been going on. There's all that. So it's kind of a topic now. It's coming back. And in fact, when I was at GDC, there were some people who had... I'm looking down at my mouse pad. There were some people who had... was it the Code Workers of America or something like that? I forget what their name was. They were nice. I met some people from there. They were basically a bunch of pro-union guys at GDC. They had a booth, and they were giving out mouse pads that had... they were based on a quote from an article, from like an internal document that was leaked from, I think, WilmerHale during the Activision Blizzard thing. So WilmerHale was like the Amazon union busters that I think Ian Hazacostas, who's like the current creative lead on WoW, used to be a lawyer for. And they had this list. It was this internal document that was only meant to be seen by higher-ups at Activision, and it said, types of employees unions exploit: lazy, non-productive or inefficient, footloose and fancy-free, no major obligations or commitments, financial or otherwise, rebel, anti-establishment, opposes society, structure, management, malingerer, something-for-nothing attitude, whiner and complainer, activist, and overqualified for current job position. So I can read that off the top of my head, because it's not actually off the top of my head, it's reading it off of my mouse pad. They have that on a mouse pad. It was fun. They were just handing them out. I was like, this is cute. So now I've got 2 mouse pads that I use, stacked on top of each other. So it's a current kind of big topic in the industry. And someone apparently just asked about, what do you guys think of it in general? Nintendo wrote in a statement yesterday, we are aware of the claim which was filed... Okay, so this is the thing I just read. But sources tell Kotaku that the social media post in question was extremely vague, and based on disciplinary actions they had witnessed in the past, would normally have warranted a warning at best. Instead, they contend the contract worker was being retaliated against for their comments in the February meeting. So I should say, I actually missed that little detail. The employee was fired shortly after for allegedly violating their NDA in a comment on social media. So, they said something in a comment on social media. I don't know where exactly. They made a post, and supposedly that broke NDA. And that's what they say was the disclosure of confidential information. That's what they claimed was the leak. So sources are telling Kotaku, that the post that they made that supposedly got them fired was actually really vague and falling in line with company, the history, if they're being consistent based on what happened in the past, usually would have just gotten them a warning. But they got fired. So it's like, the conclusion that a lot of people have been coming to, at least these sources, was that this was a retaliation for asking about unions. Now here's where we get to the main meat of the story, really, which kind of ballooned well outside of what this initially was, just a story about someone maybe being fired for a bullshit reason. There's a lot of problems, it seems, with contract workers at Nintendo. And reading the comments under this article, pardon me, seems like those problems are not just Nintendo problems, they're just contracting in general problems. Contractors are essentially used so that the company does not... They can basically work... They basically have full-time employees who are not full-time employees, so they don't have to give them any of the benefits, any of the pay, any of that stuff. So one of the main things was that, like, well, there's people who are working for Nintendo as contractors for literally, like, 10 years. They're never promoted to full-time. They're doing the exact same work alongside full-time employees, sometimes more, you know? And they're not getting promoted to full-time. So they're doing so much work, and they are not... they're not getting the benefits. They're not getting like stuff like health benefits, which in America is kind of important, because that shit is expensive if you have to pay for it yourself. Many testers say that they make as little as $16 an hour, which is less than the minimum wage of next door Seattle, in one of the priciest housing markets in the country. A handful of people make over $20, but that's rare, said one current full-time employee. Meanwhile, competitor Activision Blizzard recently announced it was making all its testers full-time staff with full benefits and a starting rate of $20, following a recent push by QA staff at Call of Duty Warzone studio Raven Software to unionize. So again, that only, you know, you have to. It's annoying that you have to fight for that, but hey, at least it happened. So, for instance, there's this kind of pretty unfortunate story from someone named Delilah Jamonja, a 5-year veteran of the temporary worker cycle there through the temp agency Parker Staffing. So basically they have this cycle where they go, you work there for 11 months, you're mandatory 2 months off where you can file for unemployment. You can. And then you work another 11 months. And again, you're doing this not being full-time, so not getting the full work, not getting the full contract, not getting the full pay, and you're not getting any of the benefits. Let's see. Let's go down to this story so that I get this correctly. The inequality of this system hit home for Zamonja in early 2020. So basically she fell, she slipped her head, it was January, it was cold. She hit her head while walking to work. And by the time she got to the office, she had trouble reading and started to worry she'd suffered a concussion. Now, fortunately, there was an on-site clinic in her building. But when she went to visit for a checkup, she says they turned her away because she wasn't a full-time employee and wasn't part of the Nintendo health insurance plan. She decided to ask a coworker to drive her to a nearby urgent care facility instead. That didn't work either, and now the reason for this is because the colleague was full-time. And it's against company policy for a colleague to drive a full-time employee to drive a contractor or someone who's not full-time off-site. And that's actually Parker's staffing policy. So that's coming from Nintendo. So she's getting screwed by Nintendo and her staffing company. So basically this woman gets a concussion, comes to work, not given the resources that full-time employees are, and she's been working there for 5 years, and she hasn't been promoted to full-time. I believe she works in QA. And then her contracting company says, nope, you can't do that. You got to go there yourself. So she says they want to control you like you're full-time, but not treat you like a full-time worker. So while contract workers are expected to perform at the same levels as their full-time counterparts, including signing up for necessary overtime when a project runs up against a deadline, their access to Nintendo of America's facilities is limited. Many said they can eat lunch at the Mario Cafe, but are expected not to linger in the main building. The company's hypervigilance around leaks means they must also be accompanied by red badges are the full-time employees, in many parts of the campus, and can't even bring their parents on a tour of the Nintendo Museum there. You can work next to someone side by side for 20 years and not get invited to the company cookout, she said. It's bullshit, said another current contract employee. The idea of being hired full-time is like a carrot on a stick to keep you dealing with the mistreatment. One former associate in the customer service department said she worked at Nintendo for an entire decade with only 1 year off, but she was never promoted to full-time status. It seems like they're just... This seems to be a microcosm of issues, judging from the comments, of issues that have arisen, that just exist in contract work in the corporate world. That contract workers are doing, they're basically full-time workers, but they're treated as basically second-class employees. I've seen the term someone refers to them as. They're not getting the respect or the pay they deserve. And the really fucked up thing about this is that it's Nintendo. Nintendo's the most cash-rich company in Japan. And they have an extremely successful console. They're successful right now. So I should mention that it seems like some of these practices, some of these practices, where was it? Yes. So there's a quote that says, there was a culture shift at Nintendo of America in 2015 where management put a greater emphasis on performance metrics. So for instance, this is someone who worked in customer service. So she says that after 2015, there was more of a focus on call wait times and attendance. So literally just metrics. Literally just like, how long are they waiting? How many calls are you getting? Like your numbers. A source who spoke on the condition of anonymity told Kotaku that projects and teams shrunk in that year, one of which was their team, and there were major structural changes in how contractors would be allocated projects. The new tiered structure for testers meant that they felt pressure to work overtime if they wanted to be assigned on more projects in the future. The source felt that these changes were because of the Wii U's underwhelming performance. So like, yeah, that's a. Oh man, I'm getting hungry. I'm getting hungry, guys. So I don't want to devote too much brain power to thinking, but I will. The worst part about it is that they can absolutely afford to pay these people and give them the proper benefits, but it seems like the state of contract work and Nintendo of America's policies around promoting people are kind of just perpetuating this really unfair, shitty cycle. I mean, the worst part about, I don't know. Maybe this is like a Nintendo of America thing. Maybe it's a Nintendo of Japan thing. This article goes on to say that, there's a big variation depending on who you ask. Nobody knows exactly what Nintendo of America's powers are and what they can change. So maybe it's a Nintendo of Japan thing and they're just applying a Japanese mindset to an American company. Let me drink. I mean, it sucks either way. Working conditions in Japan aren't great just because they're okay with it. I don't know. I think one of my least favorite things about... people always talk about, like, hey, what's a good economic system? I think every economic system is kind of bad. Like, there's pros and cons, I guess. Every single one of them can be exploited in some way. I think one of my least favorite things about capitalism And honestly, this is kind of just America in general, like American culture, is that it always feels like, this is something, again, this is maybe just an American experience. It feels like everyone's trying to exploit everyone else. It feels like it's individualist to the point that people only really care about the... people only really care about themselves. And advancing themselves. And in order to do that, they will just exploit the people around them. And it's so embedded into corporate culture because it's so much easier to do when it's corporate, right? Because, I mean, imagine, I think a lot of the reasons that, like, a lot of people are unhappy with, like, corporate jobs, I'm sure some people like them, but I think there's a lot of people who find them unfulfilling or something. And I think that's because it's very, like, impersonal. Like, you don't get to... If you're like a cobbler or something in the old days, you would, like, someone would come in and they would ask you to make you some shoes, and then you would do all the measuring and stuff, and then you would make the shoes. And maybe, like, making the shoes isn't, like, the most fun thing, but you're pretty good at it. And so, like, when they get the shoes, they're like, wow, these shoes are great. Thank you, Mr. or Mrs. Or dog. So, like, cobbler dog. The dobbler. The dogler. Yo, like a dog that makes shoes and it's just the dogler? Yeah. Oh, sorry. The fuck was I talking about? I don't do drugs, guys. I'm sorry. I don't. This is just... Anyway, now it's like, okay, well, you work a bunch on something and then you don't get to see, like, what the fruits of your labor. Like, a lot of people, they maybe don't super enjoy the work itself, but, like, the output of that, like, the consequence of that work is what's satisfying to them. Like, I don't love doing this, but it makes people happy, and that's what I get enjoyment out of. Like, do I love... I don't know. I get a lot of... my generation especially, I think, is like, gotta do what you love. Gotta do what you love. Or, you know, make your passion your work, and then you'll never work a day in your life. That's not really true. I feel like more often it's like the opposite happens, where your passion becomes your work. And it ends up being like, okay, well, this isn't fun anymore. And now, mind you, I'm not like that. I'm sure there's people whom that's happened for. I'm not like that. I still really do like what I do, and there's a lot of parts of the process that I enjoy, for making videos, for instance. But, like, I'd be lying if I was like, oh, I wake up every day and I can't wait to make videos and I can't wait to edit this thing. Like, no. Sometimes I wake up and I'm like, fuck, I gotta get this shit done. But, like, when I release the video, and there is, like, an amount that I think what kept me really going in the beginning was that I just like expressing myself. And that's part of the process that I find very satisfying. But, like, one of the best parts for me is, like, reading comments. Because people seem... I get so many nice comments. There's so many comments that have, like, really touched me. And, seeing people's reactions and just, like, hearing these reactions they have to my videos that, like, I would have never expected. Like, some people have some, like, very strong emotional responses to what I make. Like, I still get comments about the luchador part of the Konami video. I've heard people say, like, crazy things to me about, you know, my Amano video, you know, some other stuff I've made. I'm like, Jesus, like, and I think of, like, the process of me making it, and I'm like, fuck, I gotta do this, I gotta And that's, a portion of it. And I would have never thought, right? And that's very, like, fulfilling to me that I could do that for somebody. So, like, that makes it worth it. That makes, like, that kind of thing worth it. I loved reading everyone's comments on the end of the Die Hard series, for instance. And, one of my, like, it's a shame when you do a lot of work and you can't see the actual, like, positive effect that you have. It's just a very abstract kind of work or something like that. I think that's why, I don't know, people who don't have, like, a lot of passion for their jobs, I'm sure that there's cases where that's why. Like, if you could see the person who benefited from what you did, maybe that would make you enjoy it a lot more, or it would make it worth it to you. Like, let's be honest, not every job that like, there's jobs that have to be done, just to make society work. And not everyone's gonna like those. But, like, the benefits are, like, they're necessary. And maybe you find that fulfilling. I can't speak for everyone. I've also never had a real job. So I don't know, I'm some fucking stupid guy. To get back to Nintendo. Some statements that I found interesting from this is that, like, I was talking about exploitation, right? That's what it feels like. It feels like there's so much it feels like exploitation is the norm in, like, corporatism. That, like, you're going to be used for all you've got. We're going to get the most. It's the squeeze. Have I talked about that before? The fucking squeeze everything to the fucking top. And they're trying to min-max. The people above you are trying to min-max so that they spend the least amount of resources to get the most out of people who are not them. And then they just take it and then they leave so that they can live more comfortable lives or something like that. And it's unfortunate. I don't know. I don't like it. And there's some interesting statements here. It kind of reminds me of the Blizzard thing. Where people basically say, let me see. Let me see if I can find the exact quotes. Yeah, so where the heck is this? Basically, it was them saying that, if you remember with the Blizzard thing, one of the reasons that people didn't leave Blizzard, or that they wanted to work there in the first place, or put up with what was going on, was that, like, they grew up playing Blizzard games. They grew up playing Warcraft and Starcraft and now Overwatch. And it's literally like their childhood dream. The way that some people will watch Disney films and they'll just be, like, inspired to work at Disney. They want to work in animation. And they end up putting up with things because the idea... I'm playing Tetris on the side, I'm sorry. The idea of not working at your dream, it's basically just exploiting people's passion, which happens all the time in the games industry, but especially for a place like Blizzard, where people have such strong emotional connections there, and where it's like... The idea of going to Blizzard and it being like a shithole is very upsetting for a lot of people, because it's kind of like one of those never meet your heroes situations. It's like the idea that this company, like, a lot of people who were Blizzard fans were hit really hard by it because they'd invested so much passion and love into the products that these people made. I mean, it happens whenever an artist or something that you love turns out to be a terrible person, or they've done terrible things. And like it hits you hard because you invested some of your emotion into that, and you cared about it, and the idea that horrible things were happening and that maybe your dollar was in some way going to supporting that, even though you weren't like, I don't know, you weren't directly paying for someone to, you know, steal the breast milk or anything like that. You were contributing money to that, and maybe it would have changed your mind if you'd known about all this. You know, people will take different moral stances on what they're comfortable giving money to. So, like, a lot of people want to work at Nintendo because it's Nintendo. Like, they love Mario and Zelda and Pokemon. Well, I guess if you work on Pokemon, you're going to be working at Game Freak, but that's the thing. Like, that's the dream. I can't give up my dream. It has to be worth it eventually. Eventually, I'll get promoted to full-time. You know, eventually I will be treated like an actual employee. Eventually, I'll be recognized for my work. Because sometimes, people who work contract for, like, QA, and again, I don't know how many times I have to say it, QA is a super important role, they will just not be credited. They'll just straight up not get credited because they aren't considered part of the development team. They're just contractors. They're not the same, despite the fact that they might have found the bug that would have ruined the game. Doesn't matter. They're not full-time, so they don't count. They did not contribute to the game. Yeah. Yeah. It's unfortunate. I hope that this story ends up positively. I'd like people to be properly credited. I'd like people who put in work to be rewarded appropriately for their work. And fuck, I mean, if it takes a union, then it'll take a union. That's why it's there. It has to be exercised. Like, obviously there's unions that don't end up well, right? But, like, hey, you know, it's... what else are you going to do? Because the people who have the power to make decisions do not have your best interests in mind. Obviously, unions can be disasters, but they can also be very helpful. And so, I guess it's important to at least understand that you have the option and to make it, I guess, the threat clear that you have the option. I want to talk about Guilty Gear. Yeah, so, well, this is gonna drop in a few days. So the second season of Strive drops in a couple days, and I expect... So... Well, actually, it's not the second season. It's not the second season, I should mention that. It's Another Story. That's what it's called. So back when Guilty Gear Strive first came out, the story mode did not include every character. There were some notable exceptions. It was like, yeah, I guess May's never really like that important to the story. But like, Ramlethal, literally like one of the central characters of the previous game, did not appear at all. And Faust, who got an insane redesign. Faust used to be Goofy Dr. Man, and then he became a horrible nightmare creature with no explanation. And it was like, oh, are we going to find out what happens in the story? Nope. It's never brought up. So my idea was, oh, what I'm assuming is, because they said on the first season would include, an additional story mode. And I was like, oh, my theory was that what they were going to do is there's a side story, essentially, that uses all of the characters who were not in the main story. And guess what? I was 100% right. But I was very curious. I'm like, how do you make a story with May, Ram, and Faust? That's what I want to see. And also Biken now. So that's cool. Because, yeah, I mean, if I think about it, Well, yeah, when I think about it, when I think about the characters who were in Season 1, Gold Lewis, Jacko, Happy Chaos were all part of the original story mode. Only Biken and Testaments were total newcomers. Like, we expected Jacko and Gold Lewis and Happy Chaos because they were in the story mode and they just weren't playable. So they were kind of dropping some hints about what it's going to be about. Maybe Testament's going to be in there. I have no idea. Testament's story now seems to be that they just kind of chill out and enjoy being immortal, which is cool. They have a list of like 32 hobbies or something like that they've picked up since like XX. So the main thing I want to mention is that so they foreshadowed a character in Xrd and then in Biken's trailer. So in Xrd, there was this guy named Bedman. He's an annoying little shit. His entire deal is that he has this condition that gives him like 5,000 IQ, but he's actually so smart that if he's conscious for even like a second, his brain will just explode. His head will just burst because he's so smart. He's so big brain. So he's basically in a constantly like self-induced coma, and he's in a bed. He's called Bedman because he's in a bed, and the bed is like a robot bed that has like big wheels with spikes on them, and the wheels like it's like basically a robot like mecha, but it's just a bed. He has a sister named Delilah, who was never shown, but only ever kind of like hinted at that she exists. And then in Strive's, in the Biken's trailer, there's like a little monologue she has at the start where she says that she's going to do something for Delilah. And I was like, oh shit, because Bedman is dead, man. He's dead as fuck. Robokai stabbed him through the fucking chest. Let's go. Robokai hours. So they were like, hey, here's Delilah. She's in the game. Well, she's not in the game, but they did release a picture of her. She's in the story mode. And she's basically just... I'll link it so you can check out what she looks like. This is like the power of like heterosexuality, I guess. Because I look at Bedman and I'm like, that guy looks like an annoying little bitch. He looks so obnoxious. Fuck Bedman. And then I look at Delilah, who was literally just a female Bedman, and I'm like, my brain's reaction is, oh, she's cute. She's cute. She's all sleepy. She's got bags under her eyes. She's actually awake, so she can be awake without exploding. She's all sleepy. She's got like a little messy hair. She reminds me of Tomoko from Watamote. What a cutie. A young girl who was awoken from a long slumber. She's lived within a dream since her birth due to a unique condition caused by her brain's inability to withstand her exceptional intellect and abilities. As she's only just woken up, she doesn't have a solid grasp on common sense and social skills. Her one and only motive is to get revenge for her brother's life. Please tell me Robokai shows up. A lot of people are assuming, like, I would assume, we're just going straight into Strive Guilty Gear lore theorizing. Well, you know, Robokai killed her brother, so, like, you would imagine that that's who the character would be. But, like, is it going to be Happy Chaos again? Because he's not entirely gone somehow by the end of the story mode, even though he got, like, kind of exploded, sort of. And, so, Are they gonna bring him back? Because I guess if you really wanted to, like, stretch it, you could say that technically he was responsible for the events that led to Bedman's death. But really, it was RoboKai. Come on, let's give credit. Let's give some credit, unlike Nintendo. Let's give some credit where it's due. So, I need to eat, damn it. My brain's not working. But I really want to see RoboKai and Strive. Honestly, that's why I just keep bringing it up. I want to see him animated. I think it would be super fun to see all his weird Looney Tunes ass animations in the game. Like him shooting a missile out of his knee, and it's like a giant missile, and turning his hand into like a big mace. I want to see it. Yeah. Maybe Testament will show up. I don't know. I'll watch it. It's going to be... I'm assuming it's not going to be like a 5-hour thing. I'm assuming it's maybe like an hour or two. Like a few episodes of an anime is essentially what I'm expecting. Maybe it'll be like some hint. I don't know. I'm assuming she's going to get into the game at some point. Okay, I have to move on and finish. That was Delilah. That was Guilty Gear. Hey there. Final story. The System Shock remake is supposedly very close to being done. So Night Dive Studios on what to expect from the, quote, largely complete System Shock remake. This one comes from Windows Central, of all places, by Carly Veloci. So I've said it before, and I'll say it again. I will go to bat for System Shock 1 any day of the week. I really like that game. If you play the Enhanced Edition that Night Dive actually made, that's how I would recommend you play it, because I think, honestly, it's the best way to play the game. It's the least clunky, pardon me, while also still retaining what makes the original special, in my opinion. And it's getting a remake, also by Night Dive. So, the remake's been... Jeez, how long has it been? Like, the Kickstarter was originally announced in 2016. It's been a good 8 years, right? 8, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 6 years. Fuck. God damn it. It's been a good 6 years. Damn it. It's been a good 6 years since my, since the Kickstarter was announced. Not my, my Kickstarter. The Kickstarter for the game. It was pretty successful. Got $1.3 million. And eventually they had to, like, scrap everything during development. They had to switch engines, which is never a good sign. But hey, they had a demo out in 2020. And I like Night Dive as a thing. I do like Night Dive. I think that what they do to bring back games and kind of freshen them up and re-release, slightly remake them is really good. I think that bringing them back and making them maybe a little easier to play, either through literal, like, changes to the gameplay or, like, controls and such, like the Enhanced Edition did, or literally just releasing them for new systems, or just on Steam or GOG or something like that. I think that's really good. So I have been very wary of this because, again, I really like System Shock 1. And I'm like, okay, well, it's been 6 years. Please don't screw up this game. So there's a few details, because supposedly it's close to release. The remake will contain a version of the original game, I'm assuming the Enhanced Edition, which you can just play like the original if you want to, and a new experience built from the ground up. So the remake is going to come, what I'm getting from this is it's going to come bundled with the Enhanced Edition. There was this interesting statement. Our goal is always to remake games so that they look like what you remember, not the way they actually looked when you played them on your 14-inch CRT monitor. Interesting. I think the best way that I can read this, the nicest way I can read this, the most hopeful way, is that what they're trying to go for is remakes that are basically like, what if this game was made today with modern technology available, while still preserving the vision of the original? You know, what if they had Unreal Engine in 1994? What if they had Unreal... It's being built on 4 or 5? Unreal 4, yeah. Obviously, in the least helpful way is to say, oh no, this is really scary. They're going to change shit. They're going to change stuff. I just want the faithful adaptation. Why, you don't need to remake it. It's all a balancing act. You have to offer the newer players at least part of the original experience. This was the case with much larger remake projects like Resident Evil 2, where the core story was mostly the same, but Capcom updated the engine and the gameplay to move away from outdated tank controls. Which could be... I at least like having the option, right? So, like, one of the things that they say here, which is a little, okay, you know, being cautiously optimistic here, is, let's see. The System Shock remake is now a full-blown FPS, which is a concerning to call it full-blown. Basically, holy shit, I can't think at all today. It's now a full-blown FPS. So, like, basically what it seems like they're doing is... Oh, that's what I was talking about, the remake, the Resident Evil 2 remake. So, like, the original System Shock had this thing where, because it was like 1994 and no one knew how to do first-person controls, it has a very antiquated movement system, just very antiquated controls. So, like, you literally, to turn the view left and right, you literally drag your mouse, like, all the way to the left, for instance, and it'll turn into, like, a little arrow, and then you'll click and hold, and you'll turn to the left. And it's very antiquated feeling. I think it would be cool if there was an option to play the game like that. Now, one of the best... Okay, it doesn't feel great, but one of the cool things about the Enhanced Edition is that it basically offers an alternate control scheme that you... Okay, so one of the... I should just explain what System Shock plays like. Basically, one of the things that is really cool about System Shock 1 is that the game makes you feel... You really feel like you're piloting like a cyborg. Like you are a cyborg. Because you have this crazy HUD with all this different stuff on it. And you can, like, literally, you have free mouse, so you can point and click on stuff to interact with it while moving around in a the first person environment, like a full 3D environment. It isn't like a regular point and click adventure where it's just screen to screen. You're literally, like, moving around and approaching things to click on them. That includes picking items up, accessing, like, control panels and stuff like that. And then you, like, click through your inventory to interact with that. It is clunky, mainly the movement. But what Enhanced Edition does that I think actually improves that feeling is that it lets you toggle between free look and mouse, or free mouse and mouse look. So you use the E key for that. Basically, you're in free mouse mode. You can move the mouse anywhere, click on stuff, click to your heart's content. But then you can hit E and you'll toggle into basically a modern FPS control where the mouse actually moves the camera. And then hit E again, and it frees the mouse from the center. And then you can move around and move the mouse around. And to me, that's, in my opinion, like the best medium between the two, because you still get this feeling that's really cool of like, well, okay, so you get like, also there's, some updates, some WASDA, the controls, the default control scheme is more modern, which I think is fine. So you get that, like, you get the smoother experience of just navigating the game, but you also have this kind of like, you have this kind of feeling that you are actually like commanding some kind of interface, I guess. Like the fact that you have to reload, you have to actually like click, you have to free the mouse, you have to click on the ammo to reload it, is actually like, I find that stuff really it's fun for being a survival horror game. If it was another kind of game, it might be kind of tedious, but I think that that's like kind of like tank controls. Everyone says like, oh, like, but the thing about tank controls is that it increases the tension because you can't just have these snap reactions to things. And System Shock is kind of the same way, where like you have to like manually interact with a lot of things, and there's no like hotkeys for it. And that, I think, is actually enjoyable, because the combat itself is pretty bland. Like, it's just horror combat. It's not the deepest thing. You point at something, you shoot, you try not to get hit. So, like, having that whole system to really shore it up and really, like, create tension, because now the challenge becomes, like, okay, can I actually, like, manage my interface to overcome this threat, to win this fight and not take too much damage. That is something I find really fun and very engaging about the way that that game controls. If you were to take that out entirely, I think my main concern is I worry about it might just feel less interesting. It might just be more boring. Because there's, like, parts in that game that are just blatantly unfair. Like, I think... Actually, I don't want to spoil it. But there's, like, there's a part where you get to, like, a level, and the door opens, like, for the first time. And you are literally just swarmed with, like, 20 zombies. I won't say where that happens, but it just... That is a thing that happens. Is it at the beginning of a level? I'm pretty sure. Like, that is, like, a legitimately alarming situation, and having to deal with that with a limited control scheme it's tense, it's exciting. I thought it was. I like that kind of... being able to, like, actually point and click at stuff is very... I don't know, it's a fun way of interacting with the world, and I think it does things to help the otherwise kind of limited combat system. Even though there are, like, fun ways to interact. Like, there's a bunch of, like, different cybernetic enhancements you can get and stuff like that. It's actually quite close. I think it was, like, one of the first, if not the first, like, real immersive Sims. I own Deus Ex. I gotta play it sometime. Yeah. I'm cautiously optimistic. I mean, another few things that I'm cautiously optimistic about is, well, I actually really like the way the game looks. The original System Shock is very kind of chunky, kind of blocky, and this game, the remake, is kind of like keeping that, where it's like it's a little dark, I think, but it's using that to kind of like emphasize these really bright, differently colored lights. Like, there's a screenshot here of, like, really dark environment, but there's a ton of accenting with, like, really bright, deep red lights and stuff like that. Kind of almost like... Some of these screenshots almost look like kind of psychedelic with the way that the light is, like, reflecting in this kind of, like, wavy... Almost like when you spill, like, an oil spill. Oh, one thing. Yeah, there's a little GIF of some gameplay. One thing that I am looking forward to, one of the worst things about the original game is, in my opinion, the cyberspace sections. So the game has this really weird thing where they were like, oh, you gotta like hack into a thing. Um, you gotta go into the computer network because you're a cyborg. So you go into this bizarre like wireframe environment with completely different controls and like a very confusing objective, and it's really weird, and you only do it a handful of times, and I don't really like it, and it's also like the last boss, and I'm really not a fan of it. It's not terrible, it's just like it's also like kind of, I could see it being like a little nauseating, honestly. It's not great. It's one of my least favorite parts of that game, and I always thought it was kind of an annoying break from the regular gameplay. Looks like they're changing it. So number one, they're making it way more just visually less like nauseating. It's just kind of like a weird kind of tactile, like a and weird. I don't even know how to describe it. It's like it's like a bunch of panels. The environment, instead of being wireframes, they've kind of translated that into like solid blocks of kind of like technological looking circuits and stuff like that. So that'll be a lot. I'm actually very glad that they are updating that because I don't like the cyberspace sections. I hope. Okay, the other thing I'm cautiously optimistic about. I got off track because I scrolled down. I saw the GIF of the cyberspace thing. The other thing that I'm cautious about is the music. The original System Shock has really good music. Like, actually, go listen to it. Specifically, like, oh my god, I was just re-listening to it before I started recording. The song Executive Extra. Oh, that sounds so good. It's so cool. I remember specifically there's this one song that plays, let's see, according to this upload of the OST, it's plays in the energy station, the engine, and the flight deck. And it's just this like really intense, like just like it's just like these crazy mechanical sounds, and I just remember being like terrified. I'm someone who gets like a lot more scared from like audio stimuli than like visual, so maybe that was part of it. But like, yeah, it can definitely, for me at least, audio can make something way more intense for me, like too intense. In fact, I had that when I was playing Silent Hill, and there's just those like super loud machine noises, and I almost had to like stop playing because it was like I was like, I feel like I was like really, I was terrified to be honest. Like that stuff really gets me, this intense sound. Most of the stuff that I've heard from the demos is just kind of like more like ambient sounding stuff. Let's see, can I pull up video? Because there was a demo from 2020. Demo. I want to listen to it because I heard it. I was reviewing it a little bit ago, and then if I just listen to the game, it's mostly like, yeah, just ambient kind of like humming, like synth hums, and it doesn't really do as much for me as like some of the straight up jams, if I'm gonna be honest, from the original. So yeah, I think I'm gonna call it a wrap there. I'm cautiously optimistic about System Shock Remake. I'm glad that it's going to come with a version of the original game. I really want to replay it. Maybe I'll just Maybe I'll just play Deus Ex to get a new fresh experience. Yeah. Well, if you've been listening this far, thank you. Thank you for listening to me. I totally forgot what do I say at the end of these? If you have a question, leave it in the comments below, and I'll definitely get to it next time. But please phrase it in the form of a question, because I'm not just gonna read your thoughts out loud. I am gonna go eat, and I'm done.